So let's talk about some common budget issues that come up, right? First and foremost, just not doing it, right? So again, as I mentioned earlier, creating that regular cadence and schedule for those budget meetings are so important. So I would heavily recommend having that schedule, put it on your calendar. You get a pop-up alert. It's 5 o'clock on this Wednesday, first Wednesday of the month. We sit down, we, go over the budget and have that conversation. Getting that regular cadence of doing it. The next common issue is not doing the budget together with your spouse. And it's very common, I will say, that there might be one person that's more engaged in doing the budget, categorizing the expenses, and that's perfectly fine. But it's really important that everybody be on the same page about expenses that you guys have and where the budget is on a month-to-month out basis. Okay. So one person can prepare it, but it's still important when you sit down to do that budget meeting that both parties are involved. Okay. Again, too many categories. We can micro break down all these different expenses into so many different areas. But while this gives us a ton of information and for you to make decisions around, it can be overwhelming and it can definitely be time consuming. And we don't want that to be the case, for you on when it comes to this, right? We don't want to create hurdles. We want to make this as straightforward as possible. The counter to that is that categories get too big. As I mentioned earlier, a natural tendency for some people is to kind of group everything big together. So it kind of averages out, kind of dilutes down some of those expenses. So, it doesn't stand out as much. But so finding that moderation between those two, as I mentioned, creating bigger buckets for more of those fixed expenses and categories that are more consistent, creating smaller buckets for categories that tend to fluctuate more and need more constant, visual kind of eyes on. Not accounting for non-monthly spending. This one happens a lot, right? Again, going back to the holidays and, the insurance payments. Again, there's so many of these that they come around, every year. And it seems like it's usually a shock to most people like, I can't believe I spent this much on holidays this year. And it's like, well, we know what it's going to be for last year. We know, what we're kind of planning on for this coming year. Let's make sure that's part of that budget every month. So that's cash is kind of building up. So when we go to spend it, we can spend it without having to worry or stress over it. Okay. And then lastly, not taking action if you're on the wrong track, right? If we're finding that we're overspending on a monthly basis, it's kind of just letting that slide by and month over month continuing on that. Again, there's going to be months where we spend more than what we were expecting. Unexpected things happen all the time. But it's, again, if we're seeing that happen over and over again, what steps do we need to do to make sure we're accounting for that, right? If we have these unexpected things that do come up, and this could be a category is like unexpected expenses. Surprise, I had to fly across the country for XYZ thing, right? If that happens on a regular basis, maybe we just need to have a little bit more of a budget inside there for random wiggle room that comes up. Something to think about and consider as you're creating these buckets.